Hi, I'm Rebecca Wassel, Yakima Basin Program Director for Mid-Columbia Fisheries Enhancement Group, and I'm joined today by Zach Scavich, our Lower Yakima River Project Manager. I'd also like to point out that our Upper Yakima River Project Manager, Mike Bosco, has been supporting us from the wings. Thanks, Mike. We're excited to talk with you today about work that we did last summer in 2022 in the Little Naches River, located at the boundary between Kittitas County and Yakima County in central Washington state. The Little Naches River is part of the Yakima watershed and is still home to spring Chinook salmon, steelhead, and bull trout. Those are the species we're typically managing for, but of course there's an assemblage of native resident fish that we want to protect and enhance as well in the river. The river is also a very popular recreation destination, especially for motorcyclists. And the main road that accesses it has required quite a lot of maintenance over the years to keep that recreation available. Over time, the Forest Service has constructed levees in locations along the river. Large riprap has been installed. At one point, all of the wood that had accumulated after a flood was piled and burned if it wasn't merchantable. And in the early 80s, fisheries biologists bulldozed the river down in places to access the water table. Our local recovery board contracted with a geomorphologist, Hoda Sendosi, to identify how the river was functioning in 2017 and where we might start our restoration work. And with the guidance of a group of local biologists and the technical expertise and engineering prowess of Tetra Tech, the project was moved towards design starting in 2019. And in last summer, we were constructing, which was a timeline we were pretty happy with. And when we look back at how the project moved forward, particularly during the pandemic, we realized that there were some pretty straightforward innovations that contributed to us being able to move through the permitting, design, and construction of the project relatively smoothly. And the first of these is that other biologists in our region have recognized the need for programmatic methods for environmental compliance. In this case, what was critical to having an efficient and not as carbon emitting project was that we were able to excavate the levees and then put the material that was appropriate for a stream bed directly back into the river. The contractor, BCI, would have needed to take truckloads upon truckloads of fill material off-site if the programmatic environmental compliance documents had not allowed for this. As it was, we ended up with a project that removed those levees and built the stream bed back in places, leading to nearly instantaneous recovery of the water table. The second innovation, which just really feels like it shouldn't be innovative, is that the Forest Service anticipated this project, and Gary Toretta, a biologist, included stream-adjacent timber units in a NEPA document that was occurring several years before the project was underway. Thanks to Gary's foresight, we did not take any wood from off-site onto this project. It all came directly adjacent. And for folks who have had to purchase wood from other places in the county, other places in the state, from other states, you understand what this saves in trucking and again in carbon emissions. For people who are trying to do a similar thing and use local site adjacent wood, we really want to emphasize that working collaboratively with the land managers is key to making this successful. Zach and Mike went out with Forest Service staff throughout the winter of 2021 and 2022 to mark trees and to designate where the skid roads would be. By doing that, they established a lot of trust, and as the project needed more trees throughout construction, the Forest Service silviculturist knew that our staff understood the prescription and would choose trees that were appropriate. And so we were able to mark them on site and bring them into the water as needed. So the project looked great to our eyes after construction, but it's big, and we needed yet one more innovation to really be able to monitor how it's functioning.
Uh, Thank you, Becca. I believe that's my cue to jump in. I'm Zach Sakavish. I'm here to talk about how we are using unmanned aerial systems or drones to gather the information needed to assess if Little Naches Levee project is achieving the modeled outcomes that were presented to all the technical board members, partners, and just overall spike the interest of everybody looking at these restoration projects in the stage 0 or the stage 0.5 context. Using aerial photos is kind of interesting. The first methods were introduced in the 1950s, and yet drones are kind of an emerging science when it comes to analyzing landscape style restoration. However, knowing the applications of this was kind of at our disposal, we rapidly developed methods to get out there and monitor the Little Naches project through time, specifically if it was meeting its objectives. Here, using a drone, you kind of see the first powerful outcome of adding aerial photos to monitoring. Generally, photo points just have an X and a Y, but adding that Z coordinate really allows you to see how that water is spreading out over the floodplain. To the left, you see the project at 260 CFS, and then to the right, you see post-project at lower flows, and you see all those braided channels coming out on the river left, the right side of the photo. So what do we want to know? We wanted to know if our project was meeting the objectives. The table above, you see those objectives and what we wanted to monitor. And defining project success against the technical working group comments, the habitat conditions, and adding temporal nature to the project, I think adds a layer of insight that we can gather when thinking about these style of projects. But monitoring all these through time takes a lot of effort, capacity, and budget that most organizations just don't have. So we kind of enlisted the help of a computer and a DJI Mavic Air 2 drone, which is the cheapest model drone capable of producing orthomosaics. So beyond the highlighted conditions here, what we're able to assess from the air is also canopy density, which relates back to that forest prescription in EA documents for riparian thinning. We're able to compare modeled inundation versus actual inundations, and actually just learn from some of the predictions made from some of the technical group members when discussing this project and critical elements of it. All that in a 30-minute flight. Again, luckily for this presentation, we had all those methods in place. So in the fall, following project completion, we saw a 2-year event hit the Little Naches watershed, and by default, our project site. The ability to mobilize quickly, have repeatable methodology already in place. We were able to capture the floodplain inundation of this particular event, mainly because there was snow on the ground and we were able to see where the flow path was taken and where water was standing. So here in this picture, you see where our actual outcomes are not really meeting the model predictions. So I'm going to call this the underachieving zone of the project. And we're likely not seeing the shear force reductions of the modeled outcomes. But on the other hand of that, we're seeing this overachieving section just right on the downstream of that, where we're seeing wood accumulation, fine sediment accumulation, and more floodplain inundation than the 2 and 5 year modeled predictions were showing. And walking the site post-event kind of showed that substantial wood movement directly below the underachieving area and the wood accumulation in the overachieving area. So giving the river the ability to act like a river is kind of important, that I think, to what we all do. So wood movement in this stretch where we're looking at, so this underachieving area is likely experiencing shear forces similar to the pre-project conditions. And historically, that would have just moved all sediment, all wood, completely out of the site with little little fine sediment present in the lower portions, and almost no wood or really habitat complexity. But what's interesting is right at the beginning of the overachieving section, we actually saw a large degree of wood accumulation and fine accumulation. So fixing your eyes upon this, the two yellow circles show where that wood was able to rack up. That's kind of amazing when you think of the pre-project conditions kind of moving all wood out. Now we're looking at the low flow channel, another critical component of this project, which was deemed necessary for fish passage during low flows. This event apparently, well, it did fill in this section of the low flow channel and scour out 3 engineered log jams that were meant to protect and enhance this area. And kind of going back to comments made immediately post-project, there was concerns that some of those wood structures were actually fish passage barriers since they were placed in the low flow channel. Well, that's no longer a concern because most of that wood is now gone. So here we're looking at the engineered placement of the wood, kind of shown in the cartoon configurations of the trees. And that's over top of the ortho mosaic of the drone photo. And what we see is those 3 log jams above being scoured, and really no definition left in that low flow channel. And I think just monitoring this through time, we'll be able to really assess the debates between stage 0 and the stage 0.5 components on whether low flow channels are needed, the life expectancy of those low flow channels, and kind of what happens when you design a low flow channel and it gets filled in within 2 months of project implementation. So ideally, monitoring this through this year and next year, we'll be able to kind of show that, you know, whether it was needed, not needed, and kind of just overall assess this. Continue on with other channel and landscape monitoring efforts. Having the ability to have a geo-reference line through the project site allows you to monitor channel migration, changes in stream length, provide adaptive management options. And this comes in the form of looking at potential downcutting in specific areas of the project, or even head cutting, which was another concern from a few of the technical group members. So while these digital terrain models generated from the drone should be taken with a grain of salt, it's kind of amazing. The circle outlined in the surface profile is actually directly overlaid with the portion of the project we applied fill. And the portions we cut it off, and the portions down below we didn't apply fill, and we don't see that substantial change. The peaks you see kind of in that is just surface elevation of the wood structures on the site. So pretty amazing thing you can do geospatially, and we kind of want to apply the same approach in cross-sections of the floodplain to monitor fine sediment accumulation, ground truth that fine sediment accumulation, floodplain roughness, and a lot of other aspects that surface elevations can kind of give us in the floodplain. Kind of moving on to another application of this and innovation, we're able to generate these 3D models and walkthroughs of anywhere on the site. So what you're looking at here is actually trees over 50 foot tall, and that's based upon the stream height. So from this, we're able to create a proxy stream layer for shade, similar to what we digitized for floodplain inundation. And just looking at this, you see that we're able to do it because there's no trees on the site pre-project. So it looks pretty barren, even post-project. So ideally, we're able to give and monitor giving process back to the river. And we've already had discussions to delay a really robust and expensive revegetation, mainly because of what we've seen thus far. And yeah, drones are pretty awesome. Kind of, again, circling back to the harvest prescription, we're able to quickly analyze canopy density, which seems to be a major point in meeting all these EA and guidance documents, but actually nobody knew how to measure it. So putting a drone in the air looking over all the harvest sites, we're able to quickly assess what canopy density we're experiencing post-harvest, with the red areas being the gaps in the canopy to ground, the green areas kind of being those healthy, tall trees in the upper canopy, and the yellow being those little bit shorter trees. So being able to apply this consistency across all of our harvest units hopefully continues to build that trust with land managers that we're able to meet the prescriptions designated in the documents. And with that, would like to direct any questions that you have for myself, Becker, and Mike, or any of the other Mid-Columbia staff. You can reach us through the midcolumbiafisheries.org page. And again, many thanks to the sponsors and partners that helped this project go forward. I think that's the conclusion.